Thanks for joining our strategic sales planning for 2024. And the idea here is to just take a look at this APEE model. If you're not on mute, you can go ahead and mute yourself for the moment. And if you do have a question, just jump right in, anytime. It's supposed to be more of like a fireside chat versus me as a talking head. Troy is here as well. So let's see here. Tino's here. Yep. And we can get going. So our agenda for today is to take a look at the APEE model, and then take a little look about this go-to-market, execution, what's working. We're going to be doing a deeper dive in January. The game plan is for January 18th at this point to do a deeper dive on GTM, go-to-market stuff, but we are going to definitely touch on it today. And so, thanks for that. Let's see here. A little bit about me, in case most of you know who I am, but just real quick. So I'm Cesar Vianati, based in San Francisco, and I'm a growth advisor. I do some volunteer work at Bay Angels on the deal flow committee. So mainly helping startups in that area. Started my career in financial services, and then worked for different companies. Some of the clients here, ATP Group. Max was going to join us. He's a client of mine for 10 years, but he's in Italy right now. He's based here in the Sonoma Valley area. He's a VP of 3 divisions of ATP Group, and Avis Budget Group was a client, as well as Travelport, where I really got to travel to the Americas and train people. Really enjoyed going to places like Sao Paulo and Bogota and Mexico City. Went to school in London and came here for undergrad, USF, Golden Gate for MBA, and then Chicago School. I did 7 years towards my PhD. And that's my family. And this is from our, holiday spirit there. And Mabel is there in the lower right-hand corner. She's my wife, and she'll be joining us, or she's already joined us here. So that's a little bit about me. We have a lot of cool folks here with us today. So one of the key takeaways, I think, from this, if there's anything else, is that, or there's nothing else, is that strategy without action remains a dream, right? But action without the strategy can be a nightmare. And I know that's a pretty cute little statement, but it's absolutely true. And so the whole point is to dive into this APEE model to understand, okay, how can we start to apply this? How can we leverage this? And I developed this model about 4 years ago. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's simple in terms of what is APEE? Well, it's really you're analyzing and assessing the situation. You're planning, and then you're executing on that plan, and then you're evaluating so that you can iterate and make some adjustments. So it's a simple model. If you follow it, it will absolutely help you boost your sales. And actually, it's a model you can use for just beyond sales. Typically, you can use this for other types of business planning. All right, so that's what we're going to be taking a look at. And so in terms of this APEE model for analyzing, there's different tools, right, and approaches you can do to analyze. And one of the ones that I wanted to just touch on for today is the SWOT. And how many people here have used or done a SWOT analysis before? Have you all done a SWOT at some point? Nick, have you done a SWOT? You have? Okay, well, that's good. And so the idea behind this is, just to be really clear for those who may have not done a SWOT, is that, and there's other things, there's also something called PEST, which takes into account the environment and the technology as well, right? Which you can factor in anyway. But the purpose of the SWOT here in this case is typically what we're doing, because we're relating it to sales in this situation, is we're taking a look at where are we in terms of analyzing the company as a whole, and then perhaps a department or division. And so it just really depends on how deep you want to go and how much details, right? And so when we're talking about a SWOT, you want to take a look at, of course, the strengths and weaknesses in terms of internally speaking, Then when we're talking about the external side, what are those opportunities and threats that we can either A, take advantage of, or B, what do we need to factor in? Now, the whole environment has just been accelerating. Things have been changing so fast, right? Just look what happened in the last 3 years, where we are, post-COVID or during COVID and post-COVID, et cetera. So we want to make sure that we're capitalizing on to be able to grow, understanding what are these positive elements, the strengths and opportunities that we want to review, objectively speaking. And, oh, great. And we want to take a look at, what are those factors from the negative side that we want to be aware of in terms of, the weaknesses and threats. Welcome, Barry. Thanks for joining. We're taking a look at a SWOT analysis, and so just to understand real quick, when I say SWOT, what is it that we're looking at? So so this is the elements of that, and here's basically when we're talking about these areas, here's some key questions. Now, we're not going to dive into all the details of the SWOT analysis here. The point is that I'm giving you a framework, the APEE model, and I'm giving you some thoughts that to consider as you plan, because at this time of year, we're now obviously December, so arguably 90% of business planning happens in December and January. Actually, by January, it's a bit late already because you're supposed to hit the ground running by January, 3rd is a Wednesday, or 2nd, or Tuesday. So you need to start thinking about these things now. And so what one of the purposes of this webinar is just to raise some awareness and highlight the fact that in order to begin or to consider boosting your sales, the part of the planning piece begins with the analysis, right, in this APEE model. So those are some basic questions to take a look at and understand. And I also have some other questions, a lot more for you to consider, so that when I share this recording later on, you can take a look at it and answer these for yourselves. Obviously, if you want to connect and do a one-on-one with me, I'm happy to do it, no charge. I really enjoy this kind of brainstorming and providing some objective feedback, right? So that's the purpose of this particular of doing the SWOT and considering it, what's going on with you in your environment. And then, of course, what you think, depending on how many people you have on your team, what you think might be different with some of the others ones. So then we're gathering feedback and then doing some kind of an assessment of that analysis to determine what are the priorities, where are we going to go next, right? So that's where we're going to go and move into the planning. But before I move forward into the next phase of this APEE model, which is on planning, I just wanted to ask if anybody has any other thoughts about analysis, if you are using anything else in your currently, if you're doing some business planning, are you considering any other type of analysis? So I thought I'd ask you about that. Anybody out there want to share?
Yeah, usually if I have a product or idea or service, I try to figure out where the gaps are so I can fill those gaps. And I have to see what the competition is. So we're building a piece of software that does video. I think I mentioned to you before. I don't think anyone else knows it, but we're right in the middle of development of a 6-month development cycle for that. And we found out that if you create video on the fly to someone with a LinkedIn message, like for a welcome or sort of thank you for connecting message or something, you end up getting 5 times the amount of replies. And so we were saying, oh, there's a gap there. Can we fill that gap? And so we looked at other tools and saw that there was an area to fill that market in. So that's one analysis that we did.
Right, and before you did that analysis, you realized there was a gap, and the idea, and probably part of the weaknesses was just the feedback, because people are getting bombarded, and we're going to chat about that here a little bit in the execution phase, right? So thank you for that, and then we'll chat about that when we get into the E of the APE model on execution. So I was just really doing some higher level touch points here on the 4 sections, little bit more detail on the execution piece is what the game plan is here for our during our time together. All right, so moving forward, if there's no other thoughts on that, I was going to talk about planning. Right, so now you've done your analysis. You've analyzed the situation, like I said earlier, you've done your SWOT or whatever other tools you're using. Now you need to assess, okay, well, what are the priorities? What do I want to do next? And so your analysis and your assessment is now going to inform your planning. And when I talk about planning, we're talking about objectives, the strategies, and the tactics, right? Specifically, that's what I mean by planning. And usually, when we say about objective strategies and tactics, we're talking about, what is it we want to achieve? So you just have like maybe one or two top line objectives in this case. And if we're talking about sales planning, then we're talking about specific target to hit. So in my last webinar, we talked about business plans and forecasting. And a lot of companies will say, all right, well, we did 5 million in 2023. So in 2024, we want to do, we want to hit 10 to 12% growth in 2024. So, that's a percentage given on what you did the previous year. You could do that. A lot of people are doing that approach. But if you did the SWOT correctly, you will soon realize what opportunities that you're leaving on the table and how you can really grow exponentially versus just incrementally. So the 10 to 15% might not even be enough, because you realize if I added some more resources here or there, whatever it might be, it could end up being more like a 50% or 100, 2x growth. So objectives is what you want to achieve, right? Strategies is really, we're talking about where is this or who is going to be providing, this revenue. Where is that coming from specifically? So your strategy is part of the plan of what you're going to be targeting, right? Pretty obvious so far. Then your tactics. So usually we have about 3 or 4 strategies that we want to focus on and test, right? And then the tactics is more about, okay, what are the day-to-day, week-to-week activities we want to implement in order to obviously execute on the strategies. So that, and then to hit the objectives. So that's really what I meant by planning. And that's really all I wanted to touch on here, because it's higher level at this point for this specifically. Obviously, when you start doing it for yourself, you got to go from a higher level into a lot more detail, which takes longer. I've actually done this in a workshop with about 30 people from 5 divisions of that company I was mentioning at the beginning, ATP Group. So we actually did that, and then each division did their own planning, right? And then we ended up doing some kind of a sharing later on to determine, okay, how is this, all of these divisions affecting our one corporate objective? CEO was there, president was there, and then all the sales teams were there as well. So just, practically speaking, you can do this as an individual, or you can do it with, multiple folks. So in terms of the planning, is there anything else that we're doing as far as planning, or anything that you're doing differently, or your approach to planning? Anybody have anything that they want to share on that? If not, forever hold your peace. Let's see, who do we Tino. Thank you for joining. You want to volunteer something, Tino? I can't hear you at the moment. Can you?
Yeah, sure. I was multitasking. Can you repeat your question?
For planning purposes, obviously, you're a business owner, and you're running a very interesting model of what you do at Baru, but I imagine you're currently planning or considering to plan for 2024. What else, or what other approach are you considering as far, or utilizing for your planning piece? I'm talking about for the new year. And if you haven't started planning at all for the new year, that's okay too, but that's the purpose of the webinar, is to bring it top of mind, raise some awareness around it, so we can start thinking about, okay, what are we going to do differently in 2024? Not better. Better gets you an incremental gain. What are we going to do differently to get an exponential gain? And planning is where it comes in. So what are you working on or thinking about?
Yes. So during the analytical phase, we also considered a blue ocean strategy, and so during the planning phase, so we're beyond our beta and we're in scaling mode. So I'm putting together a go-to-market framework and working document with my team to completely redo our initial website so that it targets our go-to-market strategy more succinctly and more clearly. Our approach is through dealers, so interior designers, both commercial and residential, and installers and remodeling contractors will be our channel partners. And we already have a number of those in the works, so that's essentially validated our target. And we have some other hypotheses around who their clients would be.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, that would be good to chat about maybe in the next one, the blue ocean strategy. That could be very interesting. But thank you for sharing that. I'm going to actually move on to the next phase, so of the APE model, which is on the execute piece, right? So when we're talking about execution, we're executing on the strategies and tactics that we've now determined, right? First, we did the analyzing and assessing. We did all that. That's informing our plan, objectives, strategies, and tactics. Now we're going to actually execute on it. Because, like we said earlier, action, without action is just a daydream. But then if you're taking action without strategy, it's a nightmare for those of you who missed that. But for right now, we want to focus on the GTM piece, the go-to-market piece of execution. And so when we talk about the go-to-market execution, we're really looking at a couple of things. We want to look at what kind of research are you doing, right? What kind of a playbook do you have? You talked about the channel partners in your situation and engaging with the designers and et cetera. And then what do you do? What do you say to them when you're actually speaking to them? So that's part of your sales playbook. Touch a little bit on this multi-channel approach and video, and then online events, such as what we're doing here. And so, when you're going to market, you really need to have three things. Right, and Troy can confirm this, but you need to have the right target audience you're speaking with. Number two is you need to have the correct messaging that's going to resonate with them. And number three, you have to have the proper value proposition that's going to resonate with them. You have to have all three of those elements in order for you to be able to move forward in your sale or to conclude your transaction. One of those pieces is missing, then you're really going to be leaving a lot on the table. And so, as far as your target, research, what we're doing is really initially is leveraging Sales Navigator, to try to identify our ideal client persona, our ICP. And usually we're targeting mid-market companies, US and Europe. And we say mid-market companies because they make decisions in about 80 days. So if you're doing your quarterly planning, which is 90 days, obviously then it becomes easier to be able to have a more accurate forecast and growth plan with mid-markets. Now, Sales Navigator is good, gives you some pretty accurate data. You've probably heard of Zoom Info and all these other things. They all claim 90% accuracy. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but they're probably more like 75% accurate, right? I don't care what anybody says. But LinkedIn tends to be a little bit more up to date because people are obviously updating their profiles. Now, we do use some other tools like Seamless and Apollo, and there's a new platform called Infotelligent. And this is for gathering business emails and business phones, right? So this is some of what we're doing in terms of the actual research. Now, once you've identified that, you have to have, like I said earlier, a sales playbook in play. We're going to go into a sales playbook in much more detail in the January webinar. But I just wanted to give you a real quick, obviously have a look here that this is the piece here you want to take a look at is, okay, what are we doing when we talk about a sales playbook? What are we saying to folks before, or sharing with folks before that first meeting, so that we can raise their awareness around, this engagement we're going to do? You typically don't want to do a demo right on your first meeting, depending on what you're selling, but usually you want to be prepared in terms of what is the conversation going to look like, right? So that's your conversational intelligence is really important, and that's part of where I help in terms of aligning there. So what are we saying during this first meeting, second meeting, et cetera, and then you have your executive meeting and decision making, because whatever the case may be, mid-market company, 80 days, you're going to have multiple meetings. If you're talking about a complex sale, you have about 6 or more decision makers. Your sale could last anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. Some of you may have already experienced this, right? So you need to really get a solid playbook in place. So we can certainly help you to clarify yours when appropriate. Now, in terms of the multiple channels of outreach, so when I say about multiple channels, there's, emailing. We usually start with emailing. Yes, we've done the research on LinkedIn to gather the folks' profiles that we want to target, which you can do if you have Sales Navigator, but then you want to email them. Typically, I email them first to raise their awareness, and then we give them a phone call. Yes, I understand that connection rates aren't that high. It's just the way it is. People are getting bombarded. You need to have multiple channels of outreach. Otherwise, you're just not going to get through, right? So emailing, low percentage of connection rate there. Voice, 3 to 7% pick up on a phone call. But if they've seen your email and you're following up with a phone call, then usually it becomes a little bit better. Typically, I think we're booking about half of our appointments using phone calls, believe it or not. The rest come through, LinkedIn, et cetera. That's what this means here. The social piece on LinkedIn, messaging on LinkedIn as well. You can certainly create a landing page, have a video on there and drive traffic to it. Or you can also do a webinar or a LinkedIn event or LinkedIn Live, such as what we're doing here, in order to build your own, know, like, and trust factor quickly. Now, in terms of video, Troy, you were starting to share a little bit about some things you're working on here, but you also have a lot of experience of using video in your outreach. That's how you and I originally connected. But can you share a little bit about, what's working in terms of including video in your outreach?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's video per se. I would say that your communication should be very personalized to that individual. And video is one way to do that. And it's a very easy way because I'm sorry, I'm looking at the other monitor. I got everyone's viewpoint there on one monitor and your screen on another. So I'm not looking anywhere else. But I would say that the way I use video is in the social area and also in the communications for a DM or an email. For example, if it's someone has connected with me on LinkedIn, I may look at their profile and say, you know what, I want to send a welcome video. And I can use my actual phone and use LinkedIn has a little feature to send a video. And I tend to get about a 20% conversion rate to a vetted booked meeting right off of that. My connection rates are between 35 and 65% or something. They're fairly good, but they're not awesome because I've seen people get 80%, acceptance rate. But if you look at my profile, I'm all business. So there's certain people that's going to push away, and I'm okay with that. But the goal is to to really personalize, have a conversation, and not sell anything. So when I talk to them and I see that they connected and that I may have 10 connections, I may pick 3 or 4 of them to send a personalized video. If I don't send a personalized video, I have a system that sends a nice predetermined video for that subject matter. And that works really well in addition. But what I tell them, I just say, hey, John, thank you for connecting. I do appreciate it. I see that you're doing A, B, and C. I'm into this area. I'm not sure how I can help you, but I do have a very good network. I said, if you have time, only if you have a moment, take a look at my LinkedIn profile. And if you see any dots to connect there, send me your booking link and I'll schedule some time on your link. Always open for a conversation if it makes sense. All right. So hopefully we'll talk soon. Thank you very much and have an awesome day. It's literally 45 seconds. I'm not selling anything because it's not my job to sell. It's my job to get to know this person. They're brand new on my network and see if it's worth, a conversation. And my ask in that video is equal to the relationship. We just connected. I can't ask them to buy my stuff. That's inappropriate.
Right.
But I did a video and to ask you to, if you have a moment, only if you have time, take a look at my profile. That's appropriate.
Yeah.
And so, and also I put the ball in their court. They can send me their link. I'm not shoving anything on it. I'm putting the ball in their court so they have control over that conversation. So that's one way to pre-vet, have individuals pre-vet themselves. And that's just one step of many. You talked about the first meeting. Before that, you have social there. So if you really want to engage with a person, it's a good idea to engage with them before you even connect. So if they have some very nice post, like it, put a thoughtful comment on it. If they reply back, they already know who you are. And then a week later or X amount of days later, if you send a connection invite and say, yeah, I enjoyed the post of ABC, if it's worth a connection, feel free. Your acceptance rate has moved from your 15% all the way up to like 85%. Like, oh, I know that person. Like we had a conversation already. And so all these techniques are really not about the sale. They're really about building a relationship. Besides the video portion, you can also do a voice memo. And so I have an assistant that sends a voice memo sometimes for some of my clients and say, I'm an assistant of this person. Thank you for connecting. And it's a little novel because it's a different element. Another thing too is you have all these multiple channels. One thing to bring up is not everyone's going to see your LinkedIn message after they connect. Right. So what do? Well, that's the purpose for having these multiple channels. Where are they at? They may not even know what a LinkedIn DM is. They know what an email is. So maybe after you send a video and then one quick message, maybe you need to jump off of that, give him a breather, and then send 3 emails. You need to send at least 3 emails on email, but you don't want to stack LinkedIn DMs because it looks like spam. So LinkedIn DMs are like short messages, and emails it's a different animal.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. In fact, I was going to ask Nick. Nick, could you just tell us real quick based on what Troy just indicated about LinkedIn, because Nick's co-founder of Resonate is based in south of London. Welcome, Nick. That's really his name, Nick Starbuck.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm the coffee franchise, by the way.
So Nick's we're working on a client project right now. Doug was going to join, who was one of our clients, but he couldn't. But what are you noticing? You're doing a lot of work. You're getting a lot of success for our clients, Nick, and you're barely even using emailing and phoning. You're really focusing on LinkedIn, but I think Troy touched on it, that shorter is better. And I'm also wondering, anything else, any other best practice that you're seeing on the LinkedIn messaging you're getting these days because of the various appointments that you've been, garnering?
Yeah, I think I'll echo what Troy's saying. You just got to keep it simple, so that don't try and sell on a message, on a direct message on LinkedIn. You're just about establishing a relationship and connecting with them. And if they respond to you, say thanks so much. Be there to respond to them in real time, so you can sometimes follow on the conversation.
And when do you, sorry to interrupt you, but when do you see people responding to you? That's the other thing, is what's changed now in terms of when people are responding?
Well, people respond to you. The beauty of LinkedIn, as opposed to phone calling, is if you call somebody, you're catching them at maybe an inopportune moment. They're busy, they're stressed, they're going to lunch, they're trying to leave for the day, they've got an appointment. You don't know. LinkedIn, they respond to you in their time when they're free. So that could be 6 o'clock at night, could be 4 o'clock in the morning. But the point is they choose when they respond to you. So it's much more of a LinkedIn is, although you're reaching out cold initially, it's not quite so cold. It's somehow one step removed. So the simple messaging really resonates with people, and they respond to you. And if you respond to them in the real time with a personalized message about them, as opposed to pitching to them, then you get a much better response and you strike up a conversation. Then it almost becomes natural then to book some sort of meeting, just explore opportunities. The other thing that I do that's quite interesting, I have quite a lot of success with over a number of different businesses, is when I get cold spammed or whatever you want to call it on LinkedIn, I often sell back to them. So funny to say that I don't have a need myself, but no, I work with a business network that could. Let's have a conversation, or I might be able to help you with your sales outreach or something like that. And
you turn it around.
Yeah, I turn it around. So, and I've done that a lot. So I run networking meetings as well, and I always turn that around on its head. And when I go to physical networking meetings, I always ask the person I'm talking to what they do first, because it gives me time to prepare my pitch back to them, and I can personalize it more, and it's less intrusive, and it gives them the ownership of it, and they take control. Like Troy was saying, they feel like they're leading the conversation rather than you are. Plus, it also helps you build an appropriate response to them, and you can personalize what you could do to help them or to direct them to somebody else in the room that you've just met. So same on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's about networking, and so thank you for sharing that. I also wanted to invite here Mabel to just give us some thoughts. Mabel, just full disclosure, Mabel is my wife. And she's the founder of Haiku Films. So Mabel is an accomplished documentary filmmaker, and she's also a producer, and she does corporate videos. So documentary film is the passion, because there isn't a whole lot of money in it. And corporate videos is what she does very well, because she brings the storytelling from documentary film into her short videos, right? You're talking 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds. So with Mabel, we actually used, what more critical feedback could you get from your spouse? And so we actually launched it, Mabel. Part of this service, part of the work that we're doing in this Accelerate Sales service is we actually did this for her business at Haiku Films. And I think, Mabel, right, you're able to garner for you during COVID 6 new clients in 6 months in terms of the videos that you do. But can you just share with us, real briefly, like in a minute or so, give a brief overview of that? I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Cesar. Yeah, really, I was even Cesar is my partner, right? My husband, I was a little skeptical. So this type of services, just because there is a part of me that is resistant to the selling part, but I knew it also that it wasn't going to look salesy, but still I was resistant to it. So when it came to be the time to really do it during COVID, I wasn't sure how it was going to happen, but I think that all the expertise that Cesar and his team brings together really helped me for somebody who is not necessarily the best business person in that kind of capacity to go into really the vision, the planning, all the steps that have been covered in this webinar, and to and really to target the right people, the right type of potential clients for my business. I had done a lot of corporate videos before at really high level for Oracle, for Google, for other tech enterprises. But this was more like a newer step up from my comfort zone, because I had to be a business owner. And so it allowed me to grow exponentially in terms of my confidence in talking to clients, but also because I felt that I was supported with all this, with this framework, with everything, including the ICP, the messaging, the cadence, and getting to booking those appointments and knowing how to communicate and have an authentic conversation with with decision makers. So that made a lot of difference for me. And so I was able to build a really nice portfolio with my team, and I have a lot to now present to New York clients in currently and in the future.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thanks for that. Appreciate the feedback. I know we have just like 5 minutes left, and so I was going to move on here and to the next phase after, right? So we covered the analyzing and assessing. That's going to inform your plan, and then you're going to execute on your plan. This is part of the execution piece that we're seeing here to engage with your audience, and we do this in US and Europe, right? We chatted about that. And after you've done this, whatever your planning is, usually you want to go into the evaluation piece. And so as far as the evaluation, typically how are you going to evaluate something if you haven't kept track of it, right? So you have to have some tools in place to keep track of things appropriately for transparency for you and your client, as well as to be able to then evaluate what is it that you're going to do, what did you do well, and what are you going to do differently, right? And so one of the tools that we use in our work is the Trello. So Trello, you can be Monday.com, you can use Jira, whatever it might be, but typically we're keeping track of things using Trello. As you can see here, we have the Kanban cards or the tiles that we're using. And so when we have a project, and this is a live screenshot of a client's project where here's what we want to, and they have access to this. Of course, you want to see, okay, what leads are coming in, what meetings have been scheduled and which have been attended, and then following up. Do you want us to follow up with that particular, because you've already had the conversation with them, or do you want to follow up with the client? Maybe some of them you'll take, some of them we'll continue to follow up with. It just really depends. But you have to do everything on a consistent cadence and have consistency in it. Otherwise, something is going to slip through the cracks. So, but that's part of what we do in terms of the evaluation piece is we're taking a look at this, and we're also potentially using surveys to do that. But for other types of evaluation, I don't know, Carrie, are you here? On the line?
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. Carrie is a consultant with CEO and CFO advisor and CPA with Strategic Business Advisors. And so, Carrie, is there anything else in terms of the evaluation piece? When you're doing all this with clients, because you work as I think you work as a fractional CFO and you help them as a strategic advisor. What are you evaluating? What approach do you take? Just one best practice, if you could share.
One best practice. We evaluate everything, all the details. What are your margins? I have some e-commerce clients. We look at what are the best hours of the day. I mean, they're selling 24 hours a day, 365, right? So what are your best hours a day? What are your best sales? What ads are getting the best responses? What are your average sales per order? What are the average sales per day? What are your best days? All that kind of stuff. So it helps to also know what inventory you need to buy depending on what the trends are showing in terms of current sales. But yeah, we analyze everything fairly granular. They know what the average sale is on each,
Right.
You can look and see what the sale is going to be that day by about right afternoon. This time of the day, you can tell the sales are going to be and we have a budget every day for sales based on last year plus whatever you think the growth is going to be this year. So you have a budget every day, you have a budget every month, you have a budget, for the whole thing, and you just constantly evaluating and updating.
That's right. And so you have to go get granular, like you said, you can. So you start at the stop level, and then you get granular and to see what's working. And then what are those, levers that you need to adjust in the business to make it work? Troy, is there, what in terms of evaluation, what are you doing in as far as in your side for evaluating? Anything in particular, Troy?
Well, is it for my business or for my clients? What are you referring to?
Either one, whatever you're.
Well, I can tell you I have a lot of stuff going on, and I have to have it going on for a particular reason. So I have to set my dominoes up. For example, the software production we're doing. I said, you know what? I need a new website, and because I need to get access to the LinkedIn API at some point. And I have a marketing portion and an IT portion. And so we did a lot of Fortune 500 company work for Coca-Cola, Xbox Mobile, and a bunch of different releases and Harry Potter and all that stuff, a lot of gamification. But I've been so involved in the marketing portion. In order to be accepted for that API, I have to have a development portion. So we're redesigning that website. And so you have to have certain things that are happening. I also, have combined some other technologies together. So we're labeling something for some of our clients specifically, so we can tie our tools together. So those are planning things and then also setting aside how much time do we need for training. How are we growing? How are we working with our partners? What SOPs, service operating procedures, need to be created in order to train some of the BDRs, assistants, salespeople, and that sort of thing. So to make sure that they at least have a starting point to understand what has to happen on an action base. So those are those are the things that we're putting together and strategizing, and also making sure we don't grow too quickly. Right. Because I know that I could have with all my systems in place, I've had up to 50 meetings a week. That is insane, especially if I have to do some of the work. There's certain things only that I can do that other people cannot, based on my skill level and experience. So how do we start selecting our clients? And right. So I never want more than 15 meetings a week, ever. Right. And they're not all sales meetings. I'm not trying to get a lot of sales meetings, because if I pick up a client, it's several weeks for onboarding process. And there's certain things that have to be, you have to shake hands, you have to have a meeting of the minds, you have to develop your profiles in a way, for example, LinkedIn profiles, or your website in a certain way where it's absolutely clear on what you do. And then it's even easier for your ICP. So there's a lot of steps involved in those.
Yeah, no, very cool. And then just to wrap that up, in terms of the timing or the cadence of evaluation, one of the things that we're doing is you have to have something, weekly. You have bi-weekly meetings just to check in, and then you can evaluate on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis. Certainly, if you're in sales, you have a MBR and a QBR, a monthly business review and a quarterly business review. But you can also do that with your clients, where you sit down with them and evaluate them, especially if you're delivering certain products. Like, Max, who couldn't join us, he does a lot of products for the winemaking and beer industry. And, that's very seasonal, and that changes. So you have to evaluate, because then that's going to inform your inventory, which is what Carrie touched on, is, how do you plan for this, right? So,
well, I had one of those meetings today, actually, with one of my clients. And we went through it and saying, this is what's happening, and this is the trajectory of what's happening. But these are the gaps here. And there's certain things I don't do. And so I have to either train the client in order to take care of that. And you could have an awesome product that does very well. But if I help with, say, getting you leads, for example, let's use that for example, and you don't make the meetings, then the business will fail. So you got to figure out who's responsible for what to make sure those things actually happen, or you might have to remove the client.
Yeah, sometimes you have to fire clients, unfortunately. But anyway, we have to wrap up here, I believe. And so I don't know, open it up for any questions, any final questions that you may have. And please jump in. I'm also going to leave this here. A lot of you already know who I am, but if you wanted to explore this further, if you wanted to have a free strategic planning session, this is a no-nonsense, non-salesy thing. I like to give back quite a bit and add a lot of value. And so if you want to do that, welcome to book some time. is my information here. Or certainly if you're not connected yet on LinkedIn, then please do connect. So I'll leave this up here for the moment, but is there any questions that are out there? And I'm gonna see here if I can post to chat my information here. But any questions from anybody there, or any thoughts, comments, emotional outbreaks? Now's the time.
Hi, Caesar, it's MK. I had a quick question, just listening to everybody. The industry that I'm in is healthcare, and the sales cycle is very long. And I was just curious if you or any of the contributors had any quick feedback that would kind of differentiate, maybe with a very long sales cycle, with some of these strategies and tactics that you kind of outlined on a high level today. Thanks.
Sure. As far as strategy and tactics for a longer sales cycle, the number one, since I am a sales enablement consultant, and I've done this with some other, firms, bigger firms, not just the smaller and medium-sized ones, for the sales team. And typically, we're doing complex sales cycles, which are longer. And so, what you have to do in that is really find, you've heard about finding an internal champion at the organization. So it's because there's about 6 or 7 decision makers and influencers in a complex sale, it's not about selling anymore. It's a paradigm shift, I know. It's not even about you selling to them as much as it is helping them buy. And so you have to introduce 2 elements. One is one of a little bit of change management, because they're changing, and your biggest competitor is the status quo. That's why I have here on the board here, you can see 55%. 55% of deals end up in no decision, ND, because the status quo, you have to prove the pain of where they are is greater than the pain of changing to your solution. And so that requires some change management on your side, and usually finding a champion, an internal person, because you're not there to present to the other 6 people or 3 or 4. You don't even know about the doubting Thomases. Right? You don't know about the Debbie Downers. Sorry if there's any Debbies on the call. Whatever it might be, you don't know. And so you have to enroll and engage somebody internally, really be that champion for you to help push that further, to drive that urgency. That's just for starters. I mean, there's obviously a few other things you can do as far as keeping in touch and providing them with value at every touch point. Right, and which you have to do in a complex sale. You have to be constantly providing value and some updates and insights. And so one of the things I do is I train people on what's called commercial insights, or insight selling. Because if you're providing insights to somebody, they're going to sit up in their chair and they say, that Mary, she seems to know way a bit more than this person and that competition and that other person presenting to us. So I think we really want to go with her, because you're exhibiting you're exhibiting that you're more of a trusted advisor, because you're providing these key insights to them along the way while they're taking their sweet time to decide to buy and to change. So maybe it's a long answer to your question, but it's a very good one. And those are some things to consider.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Caesar, to add to what you're saying, the key thing was about value.
Yes.
And it's not what's valuable to us, it's what's valuable to them. So you have to really get in their head saying, where are they hurting and how can I solve that? Yes. When I was doing a lot of IT type sales, those projects were fairly large. They're maybe 1.5 million for a small team. That's not a huge project, but it's pretty big for a team of 4 or 5 people. And those were sales cycles that took 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year sometimes to do. And what we would also do is we would provide certain type of value or fix a situation. And sometimes it would be for a fee, but you got your foot in the door. And then now you're, like you said, a trusted advisor, and you're making sure that you're not burning your time, but you're providing that solution for their immediate pain. And if you can do that, you're more in the mix. And I love the idea about providing insights as well. That's pretty important. But I also think there's a level of, I'm providing all this free value and I may not get nothing back. So you got to kind of feel it out to see what is too much, what's not, what's appropriate, what's going to be able to catapult me within the relationship of that prospect.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's pretty much going to wrap up what we've discussed here. Thanks for your time today. So we explored this APEE model to help you in your business planning, right, for 2024. So if you do want to explore that further, then go ahead. Obviously, this is my calendar here, or you can just go to my LinkedIn profile, and at the top it says book some time. Welcome to do that. But yeah, thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you at the next webinar, which will be in January. We're going to go more in depth into the go-to-market execution and a little bit of what we touched on today of what's working and what's not working in terms of getting in front of potential clients and obviously boosting your sales. All right, so thanks everyone for joining. Happy holidays, and Mele Kalikimaka.